Welcome to the Saints Crown Show. This is a show for men who want to grow. In a world where confusion is the culture and passivity is the practice, we exist to take men from gaining massive clarity to taking massive action, because we believe that if we can help bring order to your life, you can bring order to your world.
Welcome back to the Saints Crown Show, where we are diving into part 2 of the top 10 cultural lies on masculinity. Let's dive in.
Let's move on to the next one. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Here we go. Why don't you read it?
Ruggedness is an old, outdated virtue. What do you mean by that?
Ruggedness is an old, outdated virtue. 1901, Vladimir Lenin wrote something very interesting. A writing that's entitled "How to Destroy the West." Some interesting things. I would encourage you to look that up if you have some interest. But some of the things were get them interested in sexy books, get their mind focused on trivial things such as sports and plays. And then also, one of the things he wrote down was destroy ruggedness as a virtue. And the truth is, in context of civilizations, Vladimir Lenin was not stupid. Yes, evil, but not stupid. But ruggedness is the last virtue to fall before a civilization collapses.
Wow.
And the idea of it. And ruggedness might be a synonym to a degree for masculinity. The capacity to provide, to protect, and to play, and to perceive. It's happened from Babylon, is the men became more feminine and drunken and sexually active. It happened in Rome. The men became more feminized and sexually active, more drunken. It's happened in every civilization before the collapse. And if they, whoever they may be, can destroy ruggedness as a virtue, then it's not something to be pursued. And if it's not something to be pursued or looked after, then what happens to our young boys?
Yeah.
What happens to the next generation? If it's no longer desirable to be a man, then what masculine or rugged, then what do we be? What are we then?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, and what I'm thinking about is, as a society, we have become pretty soft because, for the most part, we've been in a very peaceful state for quite a while. And so we haven't had to be drafted and go to a war. We haven't had to fight world wars or experience that. Our generation hasn't. And so the lack that comes with, I think, naturally removes that virtue to one degree, right? And then I think there's also this thought process that, even just culturally, the attack of, oh, well, that's just like an old man's way of processing through something, or you should be more, not as like a hard man, like you should be more soft and receiving and loving and kind, which is true. But there's also this like you're saying, like this virtue that as men, like we're built and we have the capacity to carry. I don't even know if ruggedness is even the right word, but like we have the capacity to operate in crisis situations that require us to be rugged. Does that make sense?
So what I'm hearing you say is, to a degree, that ruggedness is the capacity to operate in crisis.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if ruggedness, if the capacity to operate in crisis is no longer a virtue, then
Yes.
we have a bunch of people that don't have the capacity to operate in crisis.
Well, and I think our culture idolizes leadership, and even just a leadership capability is being willing to like get in the trenches, get in the mud,
Yes.
get dirty, like be rugged, like get in there with the team to make things happen. I know it's kind of like a tangent into leadership, but it's true. Like as men, we have to be willing to do whatever it takes to jump into the crisis in order to bring order to it. But we have to know that like it's God-given. Like it's a God-given ability inside of us to be able to operate in ruggedness in order to essentially bring order and peace and the release of the tension.
Excellent. Excellently articulated. Let's move on to next one.
So men who have the capacity for violence are dangerous.
Have you heard that?
I have heard that. Yeah. I think over the last few years, we've seen violence take over our cities, violence take over all of these different situations. And so violence is being amplified and also being contributed to an attack on masculinity, that this is men's fault. It's our problem that we've created because we're violent individuals.
That's interesting. Men who have the capacity for violence are dangerous. So if we believe that cultural perspective, then number one, we will not take up or grow in that capacity. And number two, we will look down upon those who do and are, which is also destroying the perspective around the idea of ruggedness.
Yes.
Right? The myth is what I believe: men who have the capacity for violence are dangerous. But I believe that the truth is men who have the capacity for violence keep dangerous men at bay. Is why is it that the shooters and those who shoot and attack innocent people attack soft targets?
Yes.
Right? When there are those who have the capacity for violence in between those people, violence seems to not happen quite as often, which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we even see this on the attack on our amendment rights for carrying guns, for being able to protect ourselves in family units. And there is this intentional attack to remove those things so that we ultimately don't become dangerous
and make people afraid to defend themselves.
Yeah, like the weapons are not the problem.
Right.
It's a people problem. But unfortunately, it's being treated as a symptom of a deeper rooted issue.
Yes.
And the moment that right is gone, you now no longer have the ability to, like, the enemy is always going to find a way to have weapons.
Yes.
And so if you have an intruder that comes into your house with a weapon that they got on the black market or whatever, and we no longer have the ability to protect ourselves with weapons.
Yes. What do you do? What can you do? So that goes down to the question is like, okay, from a father's perspective. Now, this happened in 2020 for me. Is a lot of the work I was doing was in downtown of a large city, and I had a 6-month-old daughter, and things started to get a little shaky. Some things began to happen. There was rioting, some looting beginning to happen. And all of a sudden, something on the inside of me kicked on that I didn't necessarily have previously was, wow, okay, even with the context of defund the police, is who is responsible for the protection of my wife and children? Is it the police? Yes or no? No. If something were to happen to my daughter, my wife, my son, who is responsible? The truth is, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me. Like, I'm responsible for that, not only to my earthly domain, but also to my creator. It's not a police officer or a
Right.
teacher or anybody else. The buck stops with me. So
Yes.
I need to ensure that I have the capacity to protect, And that's whenever I began to train very intentionally and began to take up jujitsu and, kind of the idea, philosophy behind how can I become a little bit harder to kill? Because the harder I am to kill, the harder it is going to be to kill my family or
Yes.
hurt my family.
Yes.
So how can I become a little harder to kill? So, and this is really easy. So you might think like, okay, do I have to like train and become a stinking Navy SEAL?
Right.
Not necessarily. Okay. Because most of the time when you're defending yourself against someone, it's not going to be against a Navy SEAL. It's going to be against a crook, a coward with a gun,
Yes.
or knuckles or whatever. So think of it this way: is all you have to do is, and it doesn't take a lot of time. Like in context of martial arts or self-defense, you just get yourself in the top 10%.
Yes.
Okay. Because again, these Navy SEALs and these guys, these are in the top 2, right? You don't have to be in the top 2. You just gotta be in the top 10%, which means if we throw down 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna have more knowledge or understanding of how to handle the situation. In context of shooting, all you have to do is be in the top 10%. Is shoot better, more proficiently, more confidently than 9 out of 10 people. So that's not very hard to get to.
Yeah.
That's not very hard to get to at all. So what happens is when you develop those skills and those traits, it puts in a calm confidence. And also, once you have that calm confidence, for some reason, bad guys are attracted to insecurity. And so it's like, do we have weapons so that we use them? No, we have weapons so that we don't have to use them.
Amen. Yeah.
Because if we didn't have weapons, we would have to find them to use them.
Yeah.
So that's the concept is
Yes.
I believe that men who have the capacity for violence keep dangerous men at bay. So
I love that. I think a lot of these cultural lies are really rooted in responsibility. And even when I was just thinking, as you were talking, that we have the capacity, it's not even really like a capacity for violence. It's like, it's a capacity to defend and protect is really what it is. And that's inside of every man. And so, just the thought of that this is a natural responsibility
yes,
for us. And I loved your perspective on it's not the police's responsibility to protect. And I think as a society in a whole, we've pushed responsibility for a multitude of different things: protection, schooling of our children, to some extent, our spiritual life, to churches. There's this in the name of convenience, we abdicate responsibility in all of these different areas of our life.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have 3 left.
All right.
Thought through.
Yes. Fatherhood is optional. Man, I immediately am thinking about what we were talking about earlier, just about fatherlessness and how that's caused multiple generations of women to have to rise into roles and responsibilities that really not that they weren't designed for, but that they shouldn't have to fill, because there's been an absence of fathers in a large percentage of specifically the Western world, like our country. It's the highest, I think, across the world. Western societies having higher levels of fatherlessness.
Yes. It's I've seen statistics on that, and they're staggering. Fatherlessness is optional, which kind of insinuates that you can sire children, but you don't have to be responsible for them.
Right.
When the truth is, is fatherhood is your responsibility. And I do believe someone might be listening, thinking, well, I'm not a father, I don't have kids. I do believe that whether or not you have children, your responsibility is to bring up children.
Yeah.
You to there, because there are so many orphans out there.
Yeah.
So if you don't have children, you still should be fathering
and mentoring
Yes.
and pouring into other people. It's really that, like, from the Bible's perspective, really the discipleship model. Like, we should always be in that discipleship mode.
Yes. You know, in scripture, this shifted my worldview quite significantly. I think 2018, when I really understood the revelation of some of the tension in the early churches. We have many teachers, but we have very few fathers. Is fathers are better than teachers.
Yeah.
Better to be a father than a great teacher.
Yes.
We need fathers.
Yeah.
Again.
And it impacts our relationship with the Father. And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, the lack of having a father impacts the way we view God, we see God, and ultimately how we can receive from God, because the model here on earth in the natural is supposed to be a reflection of the supernatural model of like our relationship with the Lord. And so our country was founded on Christian values, and now we are in a post-Christian era, which is mind-blowing that the original founding fathers of our country founded our country on Christian values. And that was something like we fled Europe for religious freedom. And now we live in a post-Christian society that doesn't value that. And now that we have lack of fathers, we have a lack of relationship with our spiritual father. And so the two are directly connected to each other.
That leads right into the next one, number 9. To be a dad is to be a joke.
Yeah, and we see this like on
We
shows.
grew up on this, didn't we?
Yeah, like dad. Oh, there's dad again. Like
Every
and it
dad was a
started
joke.
off as like these like comedy moments.
And
like
I thought it was funny as a kid.
Like we joke about it and we laugh about it and we see it in shows. But like the heart behind that was to plant seeds of doubt.
Which we didn't
in our
know at
father.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the dads of the sitcoms were idiots.
Yeah.
Stupid, dumb.
Yep. Watch TV, absent, not really there.
Yes.
You know, was sent in for discipline moments, maybe.
Right.
So,
and the brunt of the jokes. And so even the idea of, a dad bod. Is that positive or negative? What does that bring into your mind, right? Yeah. So there is this idea that to be a dad is to be a joke.
Yeah.
What do you think on that?
I think it's sad because the truth of that is that to be a dad is to be a steward, and to steward the children and your wife and your family that God's given you. And so the attack on that is to create a thought process in a younger generation that like, I don't have to take my dad seriously. I don't have to, heed to his wisdom or his correction or be able to apply maybe a principle or wisdom that he may be speaking to me about. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the intention is to get it to where we don't see our dad as a serious thing. Like we see it as a joke. We see it as he's the guy in the corner that's just watching a show, and he provides for us, and there's nothing more than that, unfortunately. And there's so much more when you see him as like a steward.
And I think if you get treated like a joke enough, you could begin to act like one. But I don't think that. I think if men knew, like you mentioned, to be a dad is to be a steward.
Yes.
It's a responsibility.
Yes.
To cultivate and to grow. which leads into this next point, which is one responsibility of the dad. Last one, number 10. Here it is. Why don't you share it with us?
Yeah, the desire to fight is foundationally evil.
The desire to fight is foundationally evil. What do you suppose that means?
Having the ability to create these moments of tension and release is frowned upon because it's looked at as like a hateful,
Yes.
aggressive attack. I think it ties into some of the other ones we talked about earlier with like the capacity for violence and really the role of a warrior,
Yes.
which we'll get into.
Yes, the role of the warrior, which I think as fathers, it's our responsibility to cultivate. But I have a son who's 1 year old.
Yeah.
And since he was maybe 4 to 6 months, the thing that he wanted to do more than anything was to have me like throw him around on the bed and like wrestle him.
Yeah.
And to make him think that he's holding me down, and then to flip him around, and he just laugh as hard as he could. And now he's 1.5, and what does he love to do? He loves, as soon as he goes outside, he's going to find a stick, and he's going to bring me a stick, and he's going to say fight,
Yeah.
fight, and he's going to go. He point at me with the stick and go, bad guy. So I'll be the bad guy, and we'll fight. And it's not anything that I've taught him. Like I have a 3-year-old girl, and that's not something that she necessarily wants to do.
Yeah.
But it's something that's on the inside of my little boy that I didn't put there, but now I'm going to cultivate it because why does he want to fight? Because he's evil? No, he looks and calls me the bad guy because he's practicing being a good guy. One day, he knows deep down, instinctively. Are you saying your 1.5-year-old knows this? I think so.
Yeah.
Deep down, that he's going to be a good guy who fights bad guys.
Yes. Amen.
Not a weak, passive man who has no capacity to protect.
Yeah.
And so even as I'm leaving, I'm telling him at 1.5 years old, you take care of mom and sister, take care of them, fight the bad guys. He's like, yes. And so do I encourage violence? I don't know. Potentially, not necessarily to afflict or to dominate, but why would I encourage violence if I do? I would almost say I do have the capacity for violence. So like, why do we have police officers at our church? Because they are people who have the capacity for violence. And when someone sees they have the capacity for violence, they decide, no, this is too hard of a target.
Yes.
Is the capacity for violence is for the sake of protection of women and children. So the myth is the desire to fight is foundationally evil, as in a boy or in a man, but the desire to fight, I believe, is our foundational instinct to protect.
Yes. I feel like, to summarize all of these, the lies are intentional assault attacks to get men to not operate the way God created them to operate. And what's being amplified and highlighted are the negative traits of what happens when you're being either passive or too aggressive, versus seeing the balance of it all. Like, there's a balance in all of these that can be taken out of context and focused on the wrong side of it, or the thought process can be, no, like, we're meant to protect, we're meant to have responsibility. Like, all of these are rooted in truths that have been around since the beginning of time of how God naturally created us to be.
What do you imagine someone could do from this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's evaluate how you've even interpreted some of these things, and realize that we're not victims. We have the ability to operate in a healthy balance in all of these lies that we've talked about, and it's choosing to take one step in the right direction. I think sometimes we can get overloaded with, here's my 10 tips or my 5 hacks or my morning routine or whatever that you should follow in order to get better. And the reality is like, it's the small things that impact the big things. And like, when I lost 75 pounds like 6 or 7 years ago, and it started by making one choice. I'm just going to drink water. And then when I got that under control, then it was, okay, now I'm not going to eat fast food. And then it was, now I'm going to eat a little healthier. And now I'm going to go on walks. Now I'm going to work out. And so it was these small little things that ended up impacting the larger thing. And so I would just figure out what is one area that you're really struggling in and choose to make one small effort in the right direction.
I think that this brought massive clarity, and I hope it brought massive clarity to you, the listener. So then what I would ask you to do is now let's take, while it's fresh, while you have this clarity, take massive action on it and then articulate. Like Zach said, what is one thing that I'm going to do to apply and do it now? Like do it immediately, which it may be sign up for a class, or I need to have a conversation with someone around this, or I need to go ahead and articulate my values.
Or like I need to be a better father or a better husband or a better brother. Like choose whatever role you're primarily needing to operate in based on what you've identified, and then just do one little thing to move in a positive direction.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining in on today's episode. We had fun.
Yes.
We did the right thing. We dove in, and I hope it added up tremendous value to you. So see you guys next time.
See you on the next one.
Thank you for investing in yourself with us. And if you feel like, hey, I found my tribe, right now, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Also, you can go ahead and take your masculine role assessment, or you can just find us on social media at Instagram at saints.crown. I hope to see you soon.